Hello everyone, welcome to the Swift Arcade. I'm your host Jonathan Rasmussen. We're going to do a little bit of a design challenge this week. I'd like you to think just for a couple minutes how you'd go about designing this kind of presentation up here. A nice little sheet that slides up from the bottom, lets users flick that up all the way to the top, much like you'd see in the typical bookmark presentation in Safari on your iOS apps. Spend 30 seconds just thinking about how you'd go about designing this, then come on back and I'm going to show you two different ways you can build this in your apps. Okay, how did that go? Piece of cake, right? There's a lot of really cool things going on in there. Fortunately, in iOS 15, Apple released a really nice UISheetPresentationController, which makes creating this kind of functionality really easy. Let's take a look and see how it works. So what I have here is a plain old view controller. I've got a stack with a button inside. I've put it inside a nav controller with a title of main. And when I click this button, what I'm presenting is a brand new view controller down here containing a table. This is called the detail view controller. And the magic behind this sheet presentation controller is just in these two lines of code right here. Take a look at this. When you present a new view controller and you get from it a sheet presentation controller, you can set these things called détentes. And basically by going medium or large, you're describing how you'd like this to present itself. This is the medium détente, going up halfway, and if you flick up, you go to the full détente, controlling it by these properties right here. So all you need to do to take advantage of this is to instantiate your controller, define these sheet properties, present it, and voila, you get a really nice, beautiful, seamless half sheet popping up, which does a whole bunch of really cool things. Notice how it dims the background. You can dismiss it by tapping here. And now there's a whole bunch of different configurations we can give this. Let's just play with them and see what a few of them are like. The first thing we can do is we can prevent this from going full mode by flicking up by controlling the scrolling that goes on inside here. So I'm just going to comment this out, bring in a new present modal here. And all we're doing here is I'm actually going to embed this detail view controller in a navigation controller just to get that nice title at the top. And then look at this. By setting prefers scrolling expands when scroll to edge to be false, if we run this now, we can get some scrolling behavior going in our selector here. And that's really nice because sometimes in our pickers here, we'll want to have something we can scroll. There might be more than just 3 or 4 options that fill the screen. So by setting that to be true, or sorry, to be false, we can get that functionality there. Say we like our starting position to be full screen, maybe not this half screen. That's no problem. We can come in here, set something called selected détente identifier to be large, and now when we run this, when we present it, it's going to look more like a full modal. It'll pop it all the way up to the top. We can still drag it up and down to the bottom here while still getting our scroll, but a nice effect, we can programmatically make it go large by setting this attribute here. What if we wanted to interact with the view controller behind this while this is presented? How would we go about doing that? What we could do is we could change this so that this doesn't appear dimmed. It would still be interactive. So when we make a selection here, we could update something here. We can do that by setting this attribute, largest undimmed détente identifier. If we run that now, that's going to change the behavior so that when we present this half sheet, this stays fully active and it's not dimmed behind the scenes. So we could have a protocol delegate here, select something here, and then update a selection up here. Really, really handy feature. If we wanted to dismiss this sheet, we need to add some bar button items up here. And we can do that like this. Instead of simply instantiating it and presenting our view controller, we can instantiate it, put it in a nav bar, and then set some bar button items in the upper left and upper right hand corner. So this could be close or this could be exit. But in this example, I just want to show you one other thing you can do. You can programmatically change whether this is full or half by changing the selected détente identifier in an action. So in this case, when we run it, we're going to put a button in the upper left for medium, we'll put a button in the upper right for large. And by tapping these, we're basically firing these events, controlling what happens. You can make this a close button or an expand button, but it just lets you see that you can actually control what goes on in here by adding bar button items to the top and then programmatically changing what happens also by changing these identifiers. There's a couple of other cool little properties that come with this sheet. One is you can change the corner radius. You can make it much bigger by just going preferred corner radius equal to some number like 50. And there's also something called a grabber, which is a little attribute you can add. It's that little grippy thing. If we run this now, we should see that the corners are made a little bit more rounded. And there's also this little grabber thing here, just to signal to the user they can grab this and flick it up or down. Okay, so there you have it, folks, a whirlwind tour of the UI Sheet Presentation Controller. But what if you're not on iOS 15? One of the challenges we face when building real-world apps is we can't always use these latest and greatest features that come out from Apple. We've basically got to build our own. If you're like me and you're not always on iOS 15, you've got some older applications to maintain, I'd like to show you now one way where we can kind of get some of this functionality by building something from scratch. We're going to create our own view controller, we're going to do our own layout, and while we're not going to get quite all this functionality, we're going to build something very similar. And it's going to serve our purposes really well. It's going to let us select something, present it, and get this half sheet functionality. Let's head over to the arcade and see how we could do that now. All right, let's fire up Xcode. Let's create a brand new project here. Of course, we love working in UIKit. UIKit is amazing. Let's go in here and go new app, and let's just call this half sheet 3, because this is the third time I've done this today. So let's go ahead and stick that on our desktop here. And all we're going to do is create our new control in here. First of all, I'm going to hide some files that I don't really care about. So I'm going to create a new group without folder. I'm going to call these files, and I just like doing this whenever I create a new project. I like to get everything out of the way that I don't really want to work with, and then just keep the things I really care about, which for us are going to be this main storyboard and a view controller. These other files we do not care about, so I'm going to drag them up here, and let's just start with this from scratch. Now, one way I typically use this control on projects is for selecting things, like selecting accounts if I was working on a banking app. So I'm just going to create a brand new view controller. We're going to do this with a nib and a view controller. You can do it all programmatically, but I just want you to see the layout, so we're going to use a nib. Let's create this and just see what this looks like. That's where we'll build our half sheet controller. So I'm going to create a brand new Swift file here, and let's call it selector view controller, just like that. We'll go create. And I guess we can do this now. In there, I'm just going to copy in a whole bunch of code. I'm going to share with you the notes I'm using to build this. This is on a repo. Don't worry about doing this for now. Just kind of watch what I do, and then you can come back and do what I do. But basically, I'm just going to copy in this view controller, which is going to populate some games in a table view controller, set up the protocol delegate, all that good stuff. And that's going to give us our basic functionality for this account selector, or in this case, an arcade game selector. So I'm just going to come in there. I'm going to paste this, make a little bit of room here. That's going to be the contents of our selector view controller. The more interesting thing I want to show you is how we're going to set up that in a nib and the layout that goes with that. So let's come in here now and create a brand new view. This is going to be the interface builder representation of what we're doing. Call it selector view controller, the same thing that we called our view controller. And in here, let's just set up a couple things. One, whenever you're working with nibs, you want to set up your file owner. So here, our file owner, or the code behind the file that's going to back this nib, is our select view controller, which we just defined. So put that in there, hit tab. And then we need just to set the view. So we're going to go in this file owner, hit this outlet, drag this view over to this view, and now whatever we do in our view controller is going to be presented and backing this nib. That's basically it. So before I lay it out, let me just show you what we're going to do to high level. I'm going to basically create a brand new view here, which we've created. And in there, we're going to put a table with a big top anchor at the top, about 300 points. And we're going to programmatically set that at runtime. But that's how we're going to get our half view selector. This is going to be a table with a little custom header view we're going to put at the top. It's really just a plain view, but in there we're going to set a label, a button that we can tap and dismiss. And this is basically our half sheet. It's going to be scrollable. We're going to control the height with this anchor. And this is just the layout that goes along with this. This is what we're going to build now from scratch. So let's just see how that looks. When all is said and done, we're going to have our same modal. We're going to pop this up, and here's what we're going to see. Some arcade games with a cancel button. And basically this is what we're going to build. Let's start by adding this background view right here. To add the background view, let's just drag out a plain old UI view. Let's go ahead and find one in our list here. Let's just drag it onto the screen, and let's go ahead and pin it. Actually, before we do that, let's give it a nice little background color so we can see what we're working with here. Let's give it a background color of, I think, System Gray 6. That seems about right. And let's drag that fully out to the edges of the super view and everything, so it's fully covering the background there. Actually, I take that back. Let's make it 5, a little bit darker. Now let's just pin that by setting some attributes here. Let's come down to the attribute, add new attributes here, and let's go 0, 0, 0, 0, fully pinning it to all of the edges. Let me just drag this up even more so you can see this fully. 0, 0, 0, 0, pinning it to the edges, add those 4 constraints, and now this should be pretty much laid out there, completely to the edges, ready for us to continue our view. Next, let's get our table and our stack view in there. We're going to add a table, we're going to embed it in a stack view, and then pin that to the edges, but we're going to add that nice big anchor at the top of about 300 so that we can change its layout at runtime and make it appear as half a sheet. So let's go ahead and find a table view in here. Let's drag it out onto our nib. Let's embed it in a stack view. And then let's pin that stack view to the edges of our view, all around, all zeros, add those 4 constraints. So that's fully laid out. And then let's go and grab specifically the top anchor of our stack view, and let's change its value from 0 to 300. This is really the big trick in this view. We're gonna push it down and make our table only fill up about half of the view by controlling the height of that anchor. Let's also give these some names while we're in here so we can better see what we're doing. I'm going to call this one background view and stack view table view. Let's call this container stack view. You don't have to do this. This is just a nice thing. Notice when I change the names here, they change the constraints here. Just makes it a little bit easier to reason about than always having to look at that word view. So now we've got our table in here and we've got this. Let's see if we can get that nice header coming up here, something that says games with a button that will let us dismiss. Let's add a nice little header view here. We can do that too by simply going add view, and we're going to drag another custom view right into our stack view, and we're going to put it right above our table view here. Now it's going to complain a little bit. It's going to say, hey, you're not laid out. And we go, yeah, we know we're not laid out yet. To remove this ambiguity, we're first of all going to hard code its height to 44. That's the default size of a nav bar at the top, which is kind of what we're simulating here. So with that view selected, and while we're in here, let's call it header view. With that view selected, let's go ahead and give it a height of 44, just like this. And then let's go in there and see if we can't do a little bit of layout. Specifically, let's put a label and a button in there. Let's add a label like this. Just drag this out and let's put it kind of, we want it about 16 points from the end. I'll put it here from now. Let's see what this gives us. This gave us 8. We really want 16, so it lines up with our table view. Let's go ahead and add that constraint there. And then let's center it vertically in our container like this, so it sits nice and flush in the middle, just like that. Then let's just do the same thing on the other side with a button. Let's drag our button in here. We're also going to give it some constraints of 16 from the right. And let's also center it vertically in the container. And that should be everything we need to get our button and our label laid out. Of course, let's give this a more interesting title, like games. And let's add the word cancel here. This is what we're going to use to dismiss our view controller when we go like that. Great. Okay, we don't need to keep this orange. We can change this view back to system background color. There we go. That's our header laid out. Actually, I take that back. There's one more thing we need. We need to add our own manual divider here right underneath the header. Nice little separator between the header and the table. So let's do that now. Of course, when you're ever doing these dividers, these are really just plain old views that we set heights and constraints on. So let's go ahead and find one in our nib here, and let's put it right beneath the button here. And something I like to do just to make it a little bit easier to see what we're working with is change that background color. And then as we work with these in our nib, I try to lay them out graphically, kind of how I'd like them to appear. And then when I add the attributes after, it's a little bit easier. So now with this, let's give it a name of divider view. Let's go ahead and lay that out by adding some attributes. Let's put this one fully to the leading and trailing edges here. So 0, 0, 0 at the bottom. So it's going to sit at the bottom there. And let's give it a height of 1. Boom. There we go. Just like that. And let's set its background color to system gray 4, because I think that's just kind of mirrors what we're trying to do here. Great. There we go. Now we've got the header laid out. Good stuff, everyone. All right, next let's hook up the outlets from this nib to our view controller in the code behind. Now a nice little shortcut for that is to go Control Option Command Return. That'll bring up the code and your nib at the same time. And apologies, I'm just going to shrink the font of this just a little bit so we can see a little bit better what's going on here. I'll reduce the size of view also, make a little bit of space like that. There we go. Let's just hook these up now to what's going on over here. So our background view, you are going to be here. Our container stack view, actually let me just rename this container stack view so it matches up what we have in our code behind. Let's drag you out there. And then our table view, let's go ahead and set you, where are you? There's our table view right there. Just dragging these out one at a time. And then this constraint here, this is the one we actually want to get here. I'm just going to drag you from here to here to hook you up there. And now if I just mouse over these, I should see that each one of these are set up correctly. Good stuff. Let's not forget to hook up this cancel button. Cancel tapped here. I wonder if I can just drag you out to there. There we go, perfect. So at this point now we should have our outlet set up. We've got our action set up for the cancel button. This is laid out, our outlets are hooked up. Let's now hook this up and present this in our parent view controller. Okay, if we go back to our view controller, I'm just gonna go Command 0. Let's go see what we got here. We don't really have anything here. Let's add a button so that when we tap it, we present this view controller, our game selector view controller here, and present it on screen. So to do that, let's just make a little bit of space, and we're going to be adding some outlets. So I'm just going to reduce things here. Let's start by adding a plain old button. So we'll come here and type button, and nothing matches because I haven't selected my nib. If we do that now, and we type button, oh, here we'll go. Here's a nice little button. Let's grab a filled button and put it in the middle here. Let's give it the text of modal, title modal. And let's just pin that and let it sit in the center of our container here by going add horizontally and vertical in container. That should lay it out there. Whoops, I have to select it first. And I'll just go like this so you can see a little bit better. Let's just pin that button in the middle by going horizontal and vertical in container. That'll lay that out. And then let's just do a control drag from here, adding an action. And let's call this present modal. This is the thing. It's going to be an action which is going to present that modal for us. And we'll just put that down there. Now all we need to do is to present the modal. And if we make just a little bit of room here, I'm actually just going to select View Controller just so you can see better what's going on here. The way we present that modal is just like we would any other view controller with just one twist. Here we are dynamically going to set the height of that anchor, this spacing at the top here, by basically at runtime going UI screen main bounds height. That's going to give us the complete height of the screen. We're going to take half that and set that equal to the top anchor value. That's kind of the magic behind this. That's how we're going to specify that height dynamically at runtime for any size device. And we've got a constructor here which takes that value. And if I go Control Command Tab and we just go look at that, it's going to take that value and just set it equal to this top anchor value, which we grabbed and have as a constraint. That's how we're going to hook that up. So if we do that now, and we just specify this nice little over current context, this is what's going to present our view controller over the current context of what is behind. We're just going to simply present that view controller, and that should give us a nice simulated half sheet controller. Okay, the moment of truth. Let's see what happens. Let's go Command R, run this now. There's our modal, and if we hit tap, hey, voila, very good. Did you see that nice little animation? We get a lot of nice stuff for free here. When we tap this, it animates up. Here's our picker. We could now add a protocol delegate. We could hook into this. We could get the selection, pass it up to our parent view controller. But it's a really nice roll your own half sheet view controller that you can leverage and use if you can't use or don't have iOS 15. Good stuff, everyone. Hey, you're still here? Good for hanging out to the end, everyone. Sorry, that's a bit longer of a demo, but there's a couple of key points I really want you to appreciate here. Number one, UIKit is alive and well. Apple and iOS are still developing UIKit. They're adding all sorts of new functionality. So don't get stressed and think you just have to jump into and start learning Swift UI. Yes, it's coming, but it's nowhere near prime time. That's why Apple is still adding really nice, cool features like the ones you saw here in UIKit to this day in iOS 15. The other point to understand is that you can always roll your own if you can't always use the latest and greatest offerings from Apple. This is just a fact of life for professional developers. You're going to go to this year's WWDC. You're going to see some really cool stuff. And while it's great to take a look at and play with, if you can't use it on your project, don't feel bad. That's the way it is for most of us working professionally. We still often have to roll our own solutions until the new ones come along. Now you know how to add your own half sheet controller to your apps, and you can start leveraging that functionality today, even if you don't have iOS 15. But other than that, good stuff, everyone. Feel free to take this, leverage it, roll your own. I'll leave source code to everything we've seen here. You can get it from my iOS starter kit, but I'll also leave links in the show notes below. If you just click on Presentation Sheet Controller or Presentation Controller Native, there you'll see a write-up on everything we've done here. Feel free to take that, play with it, and make it your own. Okay, I hope you found that useful. Do hit like, do hit subscribe, come on back, and we'll continue exploring this and other exciting things in iOS together. Great, have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.